Okay, here you go. My name's Noah. It's the Zone Podcast again. Today I'm with David. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about your story and how you kind of got into all solar and everything like that and manufacturing.
Good morning. This is David.
Yeah.
um, so a little bit about me. I've actually been in the industry since 2015, in the solar industry to be specific. Um, I literally started from the very bottom, literally digging trenches. Worked my way up from literally digging trenches to getting my electrical license, to owning my own installation team, to growing that installation team, to being one of the largest installation teams here in the state of Texas, to partnering with different companies here in the United States to fulfill logistical needs on the installation side, to kind of expanding that into a sales company and partnering with various sales companies at the same time to basically getting into the EPC business. And then from there, we've kind of taken it all the way up to manufacturing.
Okay. So you said kind of before we got on that you don't do any part of the sales stuff. So what have you figured out? Like, what's the right sales teams that you guys choose when you're? What do you look at when you're looking for a sales team?
Integrity.
Yeah.
That's going to be the most important thing. When it comes to being an EPC in the solar industry, we don't really have control on how our sales teams are selling.
Right.
Um, and one of the worst things that we can do, even though it's kind of our reputation on the line, it's not as much of our reputation on the line as the sales teams. We always get the fall off of it, right?
Mhm.
So one of the things that we don't want to see is we don't want to see sales companies going out there and selling bad deals. What I mean by bad deals is there's a lot of softwares that we use that can be manipulated in certain ways if you're proficient enough with that software in order to change the offsets um, of the solar system to basically increase a smaller system's offset to a larger one, and then it being sold as 100% offset versus a true 30 or 40%. So what happens is that they convince homeowners into signing loans that basically are they're garbage.
Right, right, and that just comes with like the integrity of the first. It's like when you first meet them, like how do you? What are like the telltale signs that's like, I don't think I'd work with these guys,
Um, funny
or you
enough,
jump in.
no, funny enough, it's sales guys tend to be very boastful.
Yeah,
And that's probably ego is one of the worst things that you can have in this industry. I think it's
right.
your biggest enemy. Um, that being said, for example, you get a lot of sales guys that come in and they're like, "Oh, I remember when I sold this 80-year-old lady and I sold her at a $5 a watt system." That's wow, you're proud of yourself. You took advantage of an old lady. Um, like I said, ego is one of the biggest things. I don't like to work with egotistical people within our industry because that's one of the biggest problems that we have in the industry, right? It's people that think they're better than what they truly are. And I'm not taking away from anybody. Absolutely not. I think some people are, have the right to strut around.
Yeah,
But at the end of the day, it's what are the qualities that you're that you're basically you're strutting around on. What are the moral grounds that you're on, right?
right.
At the same time, you don't want someone that's going to shroud themselves and, oh, I'm very I like to do my business very Christian, and I don't have issues with that. The thing is that you see a lot of people that are pretty hypocritical that come into the industry, and they try to shroud themselves in, oh, well, we're 100% a Christian company and Christian owned, and that's not the issue. The issue is that they use that as a cover for what they're truly doing in the background, and it's usually some sort of scamming with the homeowner. So they're able to attract a certain client at the same time. They're not doing their client any justice. And this is
Wow,
actually that's a very common one that I've seen here in the last, especially in the last 2-3 years.
wow, what the heck? So they're literally like, hey, they're providing. They're like, hey, we're a Christian company. So then they're attracting that certain type of person, and then they're just taking advantage of faith.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And I'm a Christian myself, and
Mm.
I don't go out and voice my opinions to everybody, and I don't use my faith as a backing for my work, and I think that's a very wrong way of doing business.
Right, right. So you think, like, I don't know, this is an interesting area of conversation. But do you think a lot of companies should voice that, or do you think it's more of like a business is business, and then when you sit down with somebody, like, yeah, you can connect on those things, but at the most part, this is what we're doing. Like, we're doing business right now.
Absolutely, I think home and work should be kept in a completely uh, separate room completely. Um, when you're doing business, you're doing business. Faith doesn't shouldn't affect who you're doing business with.
Yeah.
Um, your beliefs shouldn't affect what you're doing business, who you're doing business with, as long as obviously they correlate to some certain degree, right? Um, but I don't think it should be the backbone of just doing straight business. Because, like I said, you get a lot of people that shroud themselves in this, and it's just not the way to do business.
Right, right. Um, Kind of want to shift gears, and then kind of go to my next question, which was, what was your most interesting customer interaction since you've been in like the industry?
Um, so I don't really deal with a whole lot of customers. I'm mainly dealing with a lot of investors, in and out. Um, so I can honestly say I think one of my most interesting investor meetings I've ever had was with a guy out of Dallas,
Yeah.
and he it was time for lunch. Instead of ordering in Uber Eats or something pretty simple, maybe going out to dinner or lunch. He actually ordered in sandwiches from New York, street sandwiches from New York City. So it did take us about we were there for quite a while. We were there for probably 8-9 hours that day, uh, and he prepared it all. So we had sandwiches at lunchtime from New York City. Had them
Was
flown
he
in.
just like, was he just like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. This is the best.
Yep. So he messaged me. I remember he messaged me the night before, and he's like, "Hey, do you want what kind of sandwiches do you like?" And I said, "Well, pretty simple. It's the sandwich." He says, "Well, I'm having them flown in," and I'm like, "Okay, well, what kind of sandwiches are these?" But no. Next day we showed up, and at lunchtime, his one of his guys brought us sandwiches flown in from New York.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yep.
With that, with like investors, how have you noticed like the difference in tone and also like how they hold themselves comparative to like the sales teams that you work with?
Um, honestly, so investors aren't sales guys.
Yeah.
They don't boast. They don't have ego. They're there strictly on business, and they want to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
At the end of the day, all they care about is uh, do the, obviously are they going to make money,
Right.
but that it's not just strictly on how are they making money. It's are we going to make money together, and are we going to be successful in the long run, right? Anybody can come in and start their own business and get an investor and make money, right? One of the biggest things that we see get to people is greed.
Right.
Greed's a evil thing. Um, I've known people that I would have I would have fought for, and the moment that they get a little bit of money, they completely do a 360 with their life. Someone that recent example, we had a previous business partner, great guy. Would have taken his shirt off his back for anybody. Came from very humble beginnings. Um, Ended up becoming successful himself, very successful himself.
Right.
Uh, and the moment he got to that next level, and what I mean the next level is when we got into the 8-9 figure numbers, um, it was a complete switch. You're talking about this was a man that I had looked up to for a long time. Um, he was devoted family man. I mean, you couldn't have pictured a better white picket fence family.
Right.
Um, and he wouldn't drink. no drugs. I mean, and in a matter of about 6 months, he let, like I said, 8, 9 figures get into his head and completely switch his life for the worst. Um, Drugs, partying, drinking, which I have no judgment there. But he started cheating on his wife. It just not someone that you really want to associate yourself, especially when you have a family. Started showing up to business meetings, extremely intoxicated, extremely messed up. And I can understand letting loose to a certain extent, but whenever it's starting to bleed into your everyday life and your work, it's just something that has to be cut off. And like I said, that was mainly just ego. He legitimately thought that he was going to take over the world and that he was chosen for something, and he had this grandiose vision of himself that he was trying to live up to. And I think that's really where people change. And you won't see investors, people that truly have money, you won't see them like that. They're anybody can go and drink and party and do drugs and have a great time, right?
Right.
But it's a self-control that you have that makes a difference between a billionaire and a millionaire. It really is.
Okay. So that's a lot to unpack there. I mean, so my thought was, and I haven't reached those heights yet, and I haven't met a ton of people who reach those heights. It's a very small club, but with that, what my thoughts are is that he's came from that smaller rung of society, and now since he kind of got it, it's like he's been chosen. That's like what I've been hearing is like the ego thing. That's what you gotta stay in your humble. So with that, like, how do you keep yourself in check? Because I didn't really get to hear a lot about your like fuller backstory. Did you come from a lower income family, or did you come from like more of a middle class?
I grew up personally in a very average middle class family in rural Texas.
Okay.
I've been surrounded by my money. It seems like everyone around me has always had money, and I was always just trying to reach those heights, right? My mother raised me. She was single mother. She did great. She put herself through school with 2 kids. Got her bachelor's and master's degree all within a scope of about 4 years combined, while raising me and my sister and having a full-time job. So props to her on that one.
Yeah.
So I can't really come in and say it was a super humble beginnings, because it was and obviously there's tough times and everybody's going to experience tough times, but I was blessed enough to not really be for him to come down too hard on me per se. Now when it comes to others, I don't think I can honestly say most of the really, really wealthy people that I've met have come from humble or normal beginnings. And that's honestly, I could say that 100% through most of the guys that I've done business with, or I've been around that are truly multi-millionaires. It doesn't come from family money. It doesn't come from real estate. It comes from mainly just going out there and hustling more than anything. And I think that's where there's a big misconception where people think, where people really believe that they're affected by where they start from.
Yeah.
And people that, I've met people that have came up with a lot of money that are middle class Americans now. I'm talking people that were raised with billions, and now are calling to borrow money every other week because their car payments late or something. So I really don't believe that beginnings, where you come from, really determine where you're going.
Right. That's an interesting point right there. Because most people will say like it doesn't matter where you are, you can do whatever, you can do anything. I've seen like a lot of the people who are very driven, the people who are working, and at least in my experience, they've been they've been from that more humble beginnings, not being able to buy the most expensive shoes when they were in school, so that always hit them. And then that kind of fire comes in, and they're like, "Hey, I need to go do this uh, because I need to take care of my family. I got people I got to take care of. I got myself I need to take care of. I've never experienced this before." Um, and then with people who kind of my idea is people who come from money. They're like, "Hey, I've had this for a long time. I'm good." And then it's like it's that comfortability, because even when it's that comfortability. So even when I listen to like Tony Robbins, people like that, they're like, "Hey, don't get comfortable. Don't be comfortable. It's okay to enjoy yourself, but don't get too comfortable. You always need to grow." So it's like from a very young age, I think a lot of the people who come from those humble beginnings, they're like it's ingrained in them that they can't be comfortable.
Of course. No, and comfort creates complacency.
Right.
And I think that there's definitely a little bit of give and take to it, right?
Right.
And not a lot of people will agree with the way that I do things. For me, it's I've always kind of considered myself more of an introvert. So, um, for me, I'm just as happy, staying at home and I work from home, so I'm
Right.
uh, and I live on a fairly decent sized ranch, and this is my oasis per se.
Okay.
For me to go outside in my backyard to go fishing is, I don't need to go out. Um, I don't need I don't need as much of the how do I say I don't need as much of the fancy things that others would need in life just to get by, to be happy, right?
Right.
But one of the things that I've come to realize is that you can't just stop with one, right? So after I built and sold my first company, it was it was a great first 6 months. I'm not gonna lie. I went and I bought the cars and I bought the trucks and I bought the big house and um, I've gotten a chance to experience that, but you get bored. You get bored really quickly, and then the next thing you know, what are you living for? Um, you can dedicate your time to your family, but in the day, kids start going to school. Your wife's not going to be. I mean, I love my wife, but she doesn't want to be next to me 24/7 either.
Right.
There's in order for it to have a healthy relationship, there has to be some space, right?
Mhm.
Um, but it becomes work becomes an addiction. It really becomes an addiction, is being able to build something bigger and better. And the next one you build, it's like, well, I made a mistake here, here, and here. Let's do this different. Let's like I said, work is an addiction, and you're always chasing that high per se of success.
Right.
And I think that's what really differentiates I guess, your average American from your entrepreneur, your more successful entrepreneurs, is that they don't just have enough with one.
Yeah.
Um, like for me, it has nothing to do with money. Like I said, I could uh, I could shelter myself in and live out the rest of my days, but where's the fun in that? Where's the joy in it? There isn't. Um, One of the biggest things that I've come to start really liking to do is helping others achieve their goals, getting not building teams for myself, but helping people build their own teams, how they do it, how having them I've a lot of friends from high school, college. They always come up and they're like, "Well, how did you do it?" And I says, "Well, you just have to do it. You're gonna mess up. You'd be a fool to think you're not gonna mess up. There's no one's perfect. But the thing is that if you learn from all your past experiences, it doesn't matter how many times you messed up. It's actually a good thing if you mess up. Um, another thing that I try to tell a lot of the people around me is your network is the most important thing that you have going for you. Um, and that's, for example, when my sister she went to a pretty big university here in Texas, out in Waco. She went to Baylor,
Okay.
graduated with her bachelor's within 3 years. honors. One of the things, she's brilliantly smart, super book smart. But when it came to go into school, she would always say, "Well, it's just this. I'm not learning anything that I can really apply into the real world," because she'd been around me for a while, and she just couldn't correlate any of the stuff that she's learning in school, really into the real world. And that's why I told her, so you don't go to college to learn; you go to college to make friends, because all those people that you go to school with are going to eventually find themselves somewhere, even if they're not as successful, but they're going to be able to connect you with other people that will be successful.
Right.
So that's how you build your network. And that's one of the things that, I dropped out after 2 years of college, and, building my network took me a little longer than someone like my sister. So that was something that I really missed out on, was being able to really make all the friends and connections that I needed, that would have helped me achieve certain goals at a faster pace, right? Because you get to meet, when you're in the university, you get to meet people with all different fields, and that's where you really interact. That's where you really create something proprietary per se, right? When you're mixing someone with construction with, I don't know, someone with an aviation, that's just something that doesn't really, clash too much, or, that's where you really make your it's what really sets you aside per se, from other companies and other people. When you have connections, like for me, for example, the 90% of all of my connections are, I would say, construction, engineering, sales. um, I don't have any friends that are doctors, or I don't know how I could innovate that industry. They don't know. I don't have anybody I could talk to that would help me innovate mine. um, and there's a lot of interaction that could happen with different fields that I would have been able to make better connections with by fulfilling my full 4 years.
So that's an interesting take. So like basically college is for connections. It's for
Yep.
networking.
Networking.
I would say, like, I don't know, in my experience, I never went to college. I just straight out of school went into sales. And I've met most of my connections straight up from business. So like
Yep.
there's not I think I kind of went to I had a kind of college in the sense of a college in business, because the one difference that I would say is I don't know a lot of young entrepreneurs. I know most of my friends are like 25, 30, 40, and the only two people that I know that are in business right now are my partners that are younger, and that's only because I knew somebody from high school, and then he introduced me to a sales manager, and then we came together, and then that's pretty much it. And then a couple other people that I've met that were door knockers, and those are some people who have started their companies, which is great, which is awesome. I have like the amount of leverage that we have in this like world is insane. Like for
Mhm.
anybody out there who's like, I can't do it, the amount of leverage we have, like even what we're doing right now, like even though I'm like not super huge, not a super huge podcaster, I'm consistent. This is episode 27. So like most people don't get, like I think 80% of podcasters don't make it past 20. And so it's like I'm already in the top 20%. So it's like, yeah, it's just consistency. That's all across the board is consistency. And you said something earlier that really grabbed my attention, which was you created this. You went off of. I'm kind of guessing here, but you went off of with one company and then made it. But then you were like, what do I do now? Or was it multiple companies that you had your hands in?
No, so it really started off as just one company that
Okay.
that I really, we had a lot of ups and downs. I'm not going to sit here and paint, a big grand picture. COVID really messed us up. We were doing a lot of school districts at the time and commercial, a lot. We're really, really heavy into commercial. And, when I was in that, I'm like, I've made it. Right. And all it took was for COVID to come in and basically just completely shut us down. I had to let go of about 60 employees at the time, which was very hard because these guys become part of your family, right?
Right.
So it becomes very hard to let that many people go, and then not to only just let them go, but they're letting them go, knowing that there's hardships that await, right?
Okay.
Well, that's very difficult. So during COVID, school districts, the last thing they cared about was having a solar panel on their roof. They really did.
Yeah.
So I started what I consider casting a wide net, right? Oh, hold on. Oh, there's something just happened to my computer. There we go. Sorry. So I did something that what I consider casting a wide net, right? So I put a lot of fishing lines basically everywhere, right? So I started dabbling in the residential. I started getting into spray foam. I started getting into the engineering side of things, and I started, like I said, I went wide. I went super wide, and we started a land development business, and since then we've kind of narrowed in, and that particular company found itself being successful in the residential space. And we partnered up with a couple different companies in the residential side, and we had work and we were healthy, but there's always that inevitable what if, right?
Yeah.
Which is something we're seeing right now, for example, which, I mean, it sucks. The interest rates are high. The average American consumer isn't buying as much as they were a year ago. So, we're already in that what if. But, like I said, we casted wide. We went into residential. We did really, really good in residential. One of the companies we were partnered up with, we were running all their logistics side, which was engineering, procurement, installations. They grew from basically a 15-man door knocking team all the way up to like 400 people, 400 employees, all in the span of 9 months. They went from like $500,000 in monthly revenue, gross revenue, to over $100 million in the quick span of 9 months.
Yeah, that's nuts.
So it was super impressive. And the motivation that these guys would have was just unfathomed. I mean, I don't come from the sales side, but seeing all these sales guys was like being at a at a frat party.
Yeah.
The way they get motivated, and I remember being at one of our parties, and one of our work parties, and their manager comes up, and where are all my dogs at? And everybody starts barking, and I'm like, well, this is really weird, but I kind of like it.
Yeah. The sales side is pretty fun.
Yeah, the sales side looks like, and there's a lot of hardships that I've noticed that go in with the sales side. It's you eat what you kill. Yeah. Every one of those sales guys is an entrepreneur within their own scope of work, because they have to go out and get and kill what they're gonna eat. Yeah. Right? They have to go and get that sale, and if they don't do anything, they sit at home, they'll die. They'll make no money. Mm-hmm. Versus on the labor side of things, it's not as grandiose as you see on the sales side, but it's steady and consistent. So where do you want to be with your life, right? Do you want to get a steady paycheck, or do you want to go and make, $20,000-$30,000 this month, and the next month you're going to make nothing? I mean, there's a different level, there's different stresses, right? And there's different prices for it. One thing I could say is that these sales guys, they're resilient. They're very resilient. They have to really be resilient to be successful in this industry, and any industry for that matter. Versus on the labor side, it's pretty it's a revolving door. And anything somebody doesn't like they move on to the next one. The thing is that both of these sides have to work mutually to achieve basically the larger goal, which is getting their paycheck, right? So if sales don't go out and work, labor's not working either. If labor's not working, sales isn't making any money
Yeah.
because nobody gets paid until the job is done. That's the way it's always been. So
I kind of want to bring it back because where I was going with the how you focused on one goal first. I got on a demo call about 2 days ago with somebody, and they were like, they had their hand in 6 buckets, and they're trying to figure out where they are and everything like that. And it just kind of not to shout anybody out, but I was like, okay, well, yeah, that's not. But when you're first starting out, every single time I talk to somebody on this podcast who's been very successful, they've been like, you start out niching down. The riches are in the niches when you start out, but then you've kind of beaten that game, and you're like at the point where you're like, well, it's like when you've maxed out your character, and you're like, you're sitting there and you're like, I have max this, agility's there, agility's there. I have all the money in the coin department. I can buy all the skins. And then you're like, okay, I want to try something new to get that kind of like entrepreneur rush. And I've noticed that even because I never really realized like why mentors would mentor if they're getting nothing out of it. Because in the smaller, I guess in the not in the smaller, but in the like 90% of people were like, it's money. It's like, what value are you bringing? What value are you bringing? And I kind of noticed with mentors and then people who would like kind of help you out, uh, they're not what they're getting out of it is that entrepreneur rush, because they're like, if this guy can succeed, I gave him those tools. I beat that game too. I helped him beat that game. So that gave me a dopamine hit. Would you kind of agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. So, I had a really close buddy of mine that I've been kind of guiding him through. He went through some marital hardship, and he went. I mean, he was always, honestly, I always admired his work ethic.
Right.
He was in the concrete industry for quite a while, and he went from, he was up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning every morning, went to work, wouldn't be back home till 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon to repeat the same thing every day. I mean, that to me just, I don't see how anybody could do that. And he did it consistently every day of his life except for Sundays, because even on Saturdays he'd go out and work. And he didn't bring in as much money as he thought he would always bring in, right? He says, well, one day I'll get a raise, and he'd go from, I remember his very first raise was like $2 an hour that they gave him a bump. He says, I'm not going anywhere with this. So I kind of brought him in and started kind of helping him through some things. And yeah, there's going to be months where you're not going to make anything. We all know that. But it's the months where you do make money that really, really count, right? It's when you go out and you make your first, $50,000-$60,000 paycheck that you're just like, wow, I've been doing this all wrong.
Yeah.
And being able to see him go from, penny pinching and being probably one of the best guys I know to how to manage money. I mean, you have to learn that. It's very admirable. I could have never been in that situation. I would have completely failed out on everything. But going and seeing him buy his first exotic sports car, or going and seeing him buy the pickup truck that he always wanted, with the big lift and the fancy wheels, and it's almost as thrilling as the first time I did it. It's the closest thing you can get to the rush. It's because even though, yeah, granted, you're not buying it. I mean, it's not for you. You don't get the enjoyment out of it, but it's the enjoyment of going to the dealership with him to, like, okay, what you can pick out anything you want, buy it. He had on that pickup store. He's always been very frugal with his money, very frugal, very, very. He believed in. I mean, he lived through some hardships at certain times, and he believed in saving was key. And He went and he was dropping off his kids before coming over to my place. And one of his kids, he has 3 kids. He's a single dad. He has custody of all 3 of his kids. The middle seat in his truck, which is still a newer truck, it was, within 10 years, the seatbelt wouldn't lock, right? So his kid got to the age where they had to turn the car seat around. And the seatbelt wouldn't lock. So what do you do then? Well, you can't move your kid without the seatbelt locking. So, and they don't make any devices for it. So he says, well, that morning he says, hey, let's go buy a truck. My seatbelt's not locking. and I went to the dealership with him, and he went and picked out literally whatever he wanted, paid for it in cash, didn't even worry about that. And that's a great feeling. That's an absolutely great feeling for him to be able to say, oh, yeah, my seatbelt doesn't work. I'm just going to go buy a new truck.
Yeah.
So it's a great feeling as seeing others around you succeed. I think it's a better feeling than yourself succeeding, because you've already done it. You've already beat the game at life. So now everybody that you bring up with you and you help them beat the game is another person that you can talk about it with. That's one of the hardest things. You can't go and talk about it to just anyone, because then it sounds like you're showing off. Even though it's fun, it's a blast.
Yeah.
Every hardship you experience and you overcome, because when have you ever been in a situation that you haven't figured out?
Yeah.
Like seriously, and that's one thing that I preach to everybody. Everybody comes in and, oh, I'm struggling here. Oh, I'm having this go on. Well, tell me one point in your life at any point did you not figure out a problem that you were having?
Yeah.
You figure it out. And that's what makes it fun.
Man, I like, and there's an interesting point in there where you're like, you wanted to create someone that was honestly like at your, like, basically you created someone who's like on your level that you can actually relate to, and you're not feeling like you're bragging to. I mean, I remember like just the sales skill, like it sounds so like weird, because it's the sales skill. Like when you get into the industry, everybody says the sales skill is everything, but everyone around you is like, sales is just communicate. What do you mean you don't know how to talk? Like, what are you talking about? Like, and it's like, no, this is a legitimate skill. This is a legitimate skill. I remember, if I'll share real quick, I remember in December, kind of got out of solar a little bit, kind of lost a little bit, but I was able to go out, knock doors for Christmas lights, and just make money.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mastered the skill of knocking doors and referrals. I mean, I knocked on one lady's, sweet lady. She actually had a sign on her door that said, "Don't knock on the door, dog will pee on you." And I was like, so I was like, whatever, let me just see what's going on with this. She opened the door and she's like, "Christmas lights? Really?" And like got really excited, and like she couldn't do it that year because her leg was messed up, all that stuff. And I got to do it for her. And she referred me out like 9 people. And I was like, wow, okay, well, this is awesome. And it took 2 or 3 days of knocking doors, and then the rest of it was referrals. And I was able to make enough money that December because I mastered that skill. So we're getting close on time, so I'm going to shift to my last question. How do you utilize tech in your business endeavors?
So overall, we kind of stay kind of old school Excel, Word documents and stuff, but we do integrate a lot of like we use Solo for our proposals, and I mean, time is money, right? So anything that we could save time on is definitely a plus, right? So for example, on our EPC side, one of the things that we use a lot on there is proposals. We probably do 200, 300, 400 proposals in any given month, and to hire somebody to stay in the back office is probably cheaper, right? It's probably cheaper for me to hire someone in the back office to just sit there and do proposals all day long. But when we use a software that literally does it for us, they go in there, that anybody can use it. Sales guys can use it. So, not everybody's going to be proficient with technology. I'm one of those guys.
Totally.
So if I can use it, someone's getting some benefit out of it, right?
Right.
So that's an example of where we would use a lot of tech. With the manufacturing side, we have basically we're going to be integrating certain softwares so we can actually keep track of our production and our batch numbers, so we can keep up with what our if we have any defects. Once again, no one's going to be perfect, especially this being the first run of it. It's anything can happen. We just need to be able to pinpoint exactly where it's at, being able to keep up with production numbers. Anybody can come in and tell you, and once again, it's a big sales thing. Our plant should be doing about 100 megawatts of panels a year. I mean, from what people we've talked to, it's right around there, but there's no guarantee of, oh, that's exactly what's going to happen. Our plant's it's 90% automated. So what happens if there's, they're upgrading a transformer or something, and we go without power for a day or two at that plant? Right. We're down. We're completely down. So there's no guarantee of, oh, it's going to produce exactly this. And then you have to find the sweet spot, because we, like, for example, we are utilizing about 8 employees per shift. So if I can cut back manufacturing by, let's just say 1%, but I cut my payroll back by 15%, then you can optimize on that. And the thing is, I'm not going to sit there and crunch numbers. I've got too much other stuff to do. I'm just going to let it run. And if I take a little bit of a loss, well, I'm not investing all my time into that. Whereas the software can do it all for me.
Yeah.
It's as simple as just clicking, opening up a tab and doing, math on 4 or 5 different numbers versus, 100 different numbers, and having to be there and track it, and hiring someone to go out there and track every single thing that's going on with production. It's too tedious. It's too tedious. So
automation and software is always are what create the company and those systems, because as entrepreneurs, that systems are what creates the entrepreneur and make sure that he's able to move forward. But other than that, it was awesome to have you on, David.
Thank you.
If you leave I'll go ahead, leave anything in the description if you want to. If you guys see something in the description, go ahead and click on it. But other than that, I appreciate you coming on.
All righty. Thank you, sir. You have a good one.